It began just before noon on a lovely spring day. The date was Wednesday, April 13, 1949. Children were in their classrooms, busy with their lessons. Workers were at their desks in tall brick buildings in downtown Olympia. Suddenly, a low rumble started deep within the earth and grew into a tremendous, violent roar. The ground began to heave and pitch, not for a moment, but for a full 30 seconds. It was a frightful experience for everyone, a moment no one would forget. Imagine sitting at your desk, doing a bit of sums. The floor beneath you starts to dance a dreadful jig. Pencils would have slid right off the tables. Books would have slid right off the tables. In homes, dishes clattered in their cupboards. Many tumbled out and smashed to bits on the floor. What on earth was happening? Was it an explosion? No, it seemed to come from everywhere at once. The shaking was so strong that it was difficult to even stand. Many people dove under their desks or tables for safety. So what caused such a tremendous commotion? Scientists later explained it all in a very clever way. Deep beneath the lovely Puget Sound region, the Earth is made of massive pieces, rather like a giant cracked dinner plate. These pieces are called tectonic plates. One of these plates, the Juan de Fuca plate, is slowly trying to slide underneath another, the North American plate. Sometimes these plates get stuck. The pressure builds and builds, like winding a spring ever so tightly. On that April day, the pressure was released all at once. This deep shudder, known as a Benioff zone earthquake, was the culprit. This was not a small tremor by any means. It was a powerful magnitude 6.7 earthquake. Its center, the epicenter, was located between Olympia and Tacoma, but it was very, very deep underground. It was about 35 miles down, which is quite a long way. Because it was so deep, the shaking spread out over a very large area. People felt it all the way to Portland, Oregon, and Vancouver, British Columbia. It was the strongest earthquake to hit Washington state in modern memory at that time. It was a proper shock to the system for the entire region, a reminder of the powerful forces at work just beneath their feet. The experience was different for everyone depending on where they were. In downtown Seattle, people watched in horror as the tops of tall buildings swayed back and forth like trees in a gale. Bricks and decorative stones tumbled from the facades, crashing onto the sidewalks below. On the coast, the water in Puget Sound sloshed about, creating unusual waves. People driving their cars felt the road ripple beneath their tires, a sensation so strange it was hard to comprehend. It was a day of absolute disbelief, where the familiar world turned into a very wobbly and unpredictable place. Tragically, the earthquake claimed 8 lives, a very sad outcome. Most of the fatalities were due to falling bricks and collapsing building parts. One of the most heartbreaking stories was that of a young boy at Lafayette Elementary School in Seattle, who was struck by falling bricks from a collapsing gable. It was a dreadful loss. Damage across Washington was enormous. The state capitol in Olympia suffered terribly. Its dome was cracked and weakened, large chunks of sandstone fell. A battered state symbol, Castle Rock, a school declared a total loss. Old brick buildings crumbled across the region. Walls held with old mortar gave way. Roads and infrastructure were hit hard. The Alaskan Way viaduct sank in places. Giant cranes twisted at the port. In the immediate aftermath, a sense of community spirit took hold. We're all in this together. Neighbors checked on neighbors. Strangers cleared rubble from doorways. Firefighters, police officers, and emergency crews rushed to help, but damaged roads and collapsed sections slowed them. It was a scramble, a real hustle to make sure everyone was safe. Damage estimated at $25 million in 1949, which would be a staggering amount today. Governor Arthur B. Langley toured the damage himself and declared a state of emergency to organize cleanup and repairs. Engineers and architects assessed thousands of buildings. Many schools were closed for weeks. Some were condemned entirely. People set out to rebuild, determined to do it differently. New buildings had to be designed with steel reinforcements, and many older buildings were slated for retrofitting. Scientists installed more seismographs, mapped fault lines more accurately, and learned how soft soil in the Puget Sound basin could amplify shaking. They studied damage patterns closely and understood that unreinforced brick and stone buildings were especially vulnerable. The 1949 earthquake pushed Washington to adopt its first statewide building codes with specific requirements for earthquake safety. New buildings had to act like strong skeletons. Important buildings, especially schools and hospitals, were slated for strengthening. It reminds us why we have building codes, why we practice drop, cover, hold on, and why we must continue to prepare. The lessons learned from the rubble and ruin of that spring day are now baked into the very foundations of the state's modern buildings. It is a legacy of safety, born from a day of terror, that continues to protect everyone who calls this beautiful but shaky corner of the world home.